Another category of question I get asked a lot is in regards to the pig's add-ons. People will ask me what's the most powerful add-on, what causes the most slowdown, and as a new pig, should I be using combat straps and videotape or something else? There's a lot to discuss about the pig's add-ons, so this video is going to take a general look at add-on combinations as well as lots of other smaller things. This way, instead of just telling you to run these add-on combinations because I say they're good, you can look at the stats of each individual add-on and you can see how they work and how they affect other add-ons as well as the pig's base stats. That way, you come out with my understanding as well as your own understanding. You can take what I say as a template, but you'll also see a nice blueprint that you can use to create a foundation for your own playstyle. With that in mind, there's going to be a lot of numbers, and there'll be a few analogies in here, so grab a cup of tea, it's probably going to be a long video. The video will be segmented, so feel free to skip through if there's something you already know or something you're not interested in. I'll try and break down as much as possible and keep it as simple as possible. Before we get going, once again, for those who don't know, my name is CMWinter, the world record pigmain. If you want to know my accolades, I've placed over 20,000 reverse bear traps, I've got 2 world record speed runs for the quickest 4K as pig, I've got over 1,200 hours on the pig alone, 3,000 hours in DBD. I think this is an interesting topic to discuss because not everyone has 1,000 hours of knowledge on one specific killer. So this guide is a way to answer a question that comes up on my stream a lot, twitch.tv/CMWinter by the way, live every day at 10 PM UK time. And we can go into more depth on stats, comparatives, combinations, and everything you need to know about the pig's add-ons. Before we jump straight into the add-ons, we're going to look at the pig's default stats. That way we have an idea of what we're dealing with at the very foundation of the killer, and then we've got something to compare and contrast to later on as opposed to just random stats that we're looking at. If you play pig, or you're knowledgeable of Dead by Daylight as a whole, you'll probably know most of the things I'm about to say, but there's some information in here that even I didn't know, so get your pencils out and your notepad. By default, the pig enters the trial with 4 reverse bear traps and 4 jigsaw boxes. Once the trap's placed and active, the survivor has 2 minutes and 30 seconds to check each box. That's simple. If we use basic arithmetic, we figure out that they have 37.5 seconds to find and check each box. This includes travelling as well as 12 seconds of checking said box. It's also interesting to note, this is what I didn't know, that skill checks have an 80% chance per second to trigger while on a box. And the pig takes 3.3 seconds to place a reverse bear trap. In regards to ambush, it takes 1.3 seconds to crouch and uncrouch respectively, with a 0.5 second ambush charge time that lasts up to 2 seconds. A successful ambush hit has a cooldown of 3 seconds, and an unsuccessful ambush hit has a cooldown of 2 seconds. As for the pig's times, that is everything. Even better is that everything on the list that I just mentioned can be altered by add-ons, though obviously some alterations are literal garbage, which we'll come to later. That's a lot of numbers and a lot of different assets to remember, but we will be referring back to these times later on to compare and contrast between said add-ons. Springboarding straight off of those statistics, we can move on to answer a question regarding Head Pop Pig. Which add-ons are better for Head Pop Pig? Temper Timer and Jigsaw Sketch or Creative Gears? This is something that people always ask me, and it's quite a contentious one to go over. But there is a very simple answer in regards to the time and the maths when you add it up and divide it down and squish it all up. If we're going to be simple, the answer is Temper Timer and Jigsaw Sketch. If you don't believe me, fight me and stick around and I'll explain it. Let's start with something simple. A head pop is random, and unless you want to literally throw an entire game to pop someone's head, there's not really much you can do, so Head Pop Pig is just a random RNG thing that you're trying to push towards. We can mention that of course the pig can discourage people off the boxes. If they have 12 to 15 seconds to check it, then obviously she has a little bit of time to scare them away with her terror radius or her spooky nature. But that is quite a random situation, and again, unless you're throwing the game for one head pop, let's just forget about that. What we do want to do is maximize our odds for the perfect situation. Now, the perfect situation will not always arise. If you're playing pig, you obviously have bad luck in this universe and it will probably never arise, but we can plan for it and we can cross our fingers. What is the perfect situation? Plainly, it means that you put the trap on someone and it activates before they start searching. That way they've got the least time possible to check as many boxes as possible. That perfect situation isn't always something the pig can manufacture because you don't want to be slugging people, you want to be hooking people. If you slug someone in hopes that the trap activates, it activates, they get up, they go check the first box and they get it off straight away, then there was no point in slugging them, you should have just hooked them. It's not something that you want to throw your game away for, so we hook them, the trap's active, they get unhooked, and now they're checking the boxes. If we're lucky, they'll heal, they'll go and read the newspaper and make themselves a cup of tea, blah blah blah. But we'll look at it in a very simple context to give perspective on the two add-ons that we're comparing. If we're using Tamper Timer and Jigsaw Sketch, which offers an extra box, they'll now have 5 boxes to check in 2 minutes. That means they'll have 24 seconds to find and check each box. Yes, that includes the 12 seconds to put their hands in and search, so they've got 12 seconds to get around the map, avoid you, heal, deal with their other teammates, potentially get in a chase. That's 12 seconds to get around the map. If they need 4 or 5 boxes, they are in trouble. So this is why we mentioned the perfect situation, because those are the conditions we want. We want them to need the 4th or the 5th box, a little bit of distraction, some time to travel, 12 seconds to check the box, they're running against the clock. Now, compare this to Tamper Timer and Creative Gears. They've got 30 seconds to check each box because there's only 4 boxes with 2 minutes, but it takes them 15.5 seconds to check the box as opposed to 12 seconds. Of course, leaving them 15 seconds to travel, distractions, blah blah blah. You can see why we're already pushing towards Tamper Timer and an extra box, because it's 12 seconds to check, 12 seconds to travel, as opposed to 15 seconds to check, 15 seconds to travel. With that, we know that statistically, the timer and the gears are worse. They have to check less boxes, and they have more time between them. One of the reasons why people prefer gears is because it gives you an extra 3 seconds on the box to potentially scare them off. We're going to come to gears later, because they're actually my favourite add-ons to work with, but I will say this, if we're going on perfect conditions, when the runway is clear, Tamper Timer plus an extra box, statistically, is the better option, particularly because those extra 3 seconds are not going to do you much in regards to scaring them off the box. Sure, you add time that they have to be searching, but if we're breaking down the numbers, then the extra box is doing more, as opposed to those extra 3 seconds, which obviously add up to 3, 6, 9, 12. Right, if my numbers are correct, I think we're good there, 12 seconds. With everything in mind, we're gambling on RNG. Regardless of everything, we're gambling on RNG. When does the trap activate? How many boxes do they have to check? All of those small things, not to mention scaring them off the box. Now, there's a possibility you scare them off the wrong box onto the correct box. So, with this analogy, I'm assuming that nothing is interfering, and we're just going by statistics, and we're going by what the piggy god allows us. My head pop pig will always be Tamper Timer and an extra box. So, with head pop pig, an extra box wins over an additional 3.5 seconds, but that doesn't mean that those bad boys aren't useful. Those bad boys being the gears, of course. Many people will argue, well, I like the idea that I can scare people off boxes, and that's fair enough. But to me, those 3.5 seconds aren't enough. What is enough is 3.5 seconds plus 1.6 seconds, which is the Creative Gears plus the Bag of Gears. This way, the survivors, instead of having 12 seconds to check a box, it takes them 17 seconds, which obviously adds up to an extra 20 seconds overall. But, let me tell you, those extra 5 seconds and that red bar that they're seeing, that's going to mess with their head, and you get obviously it's random. These are my go-to. These are my go-to add-ons. I find so much value out of them, it's not even funny, when I'm just wandering around and someone's still there with their hands in the box and like, god damn it, this red bar will not go away. With 2 minutes and 30 seconds default to check all 4 boxes, the Creative Gears and the Bag of Gears add-on isn't really there to pop anyone's head. You're there to catch people with their pants down, you know? You're there showing up where they think they should be gone. Oh, I've got time. What? This has taken an extra 5 seconds? Okay, the pig's here, I'm injured. God damn it, I'm now dead. I don't think I need to say anything more than that, really. There's just a lot of opportunity to annoy people, you know, and as a killer, that's really all you can ever ask for. Playing against people with these add-ons, all I ever hear, oh god damn it, of course she's got the double add-ons. Oh, I'm going to be here for 6 years, I'm never getting out of this match. So without a doubt, these are my absolute favourite add-ons. Top 3 at least. Because the beauty of them is that they don't rely on RNG to do their job. Sure, every trap can be taken off first try, that is a possibility, and there's a possibility that they all take them off first try, but that extra 5 seconds from 12 to 17 can offer you opportunities in 4 different scenarios, and that's an extra 20 seconds overall. Not to mention, it's quite unlikely that everyone gets it off first try, so those 5 seconds add up over and over and over. If someone needs 4 boxes, that's 1 minute and 10 seconds of wasted time. Then just say that everyone else needs the first box. That's 2 minutes of wasted time just by those extra 5 seconds alone. So definitely a big recommendation from me as these bad boys because of the opportunities that they offer you. Alright, head pop pig and double gears were real simple. Compared to what we're about to talk about now, this is the section that has taken me the most time to research, weigh up, and compare, particularly because I'm not a numbers guy, I'm a words guy. So we're going to look at the difference between ambush add-ons, particularly in combination, so we're going to specifically look at combat straps and videotape versus John's medical file and the videotape. I need to firstly say this, which is a very interesting thing. Before I break down the numbers, which there are going to be a lot of, do note that the add-ons are not added together and placed onto the base stat. From what I'm told, the add-ons are seen as percentages which go on the base stat one at a time. So for example, the videotape goes on and then the medical file goes on. This is going to make sense in a moment, just bear in mind you don't add up the add-ons and throw them on the stat, you do the add-ons one at a time. For a refresher, the pig takes 1.3 seconds to crouch and uncrouch respectively of course, and she takes 0.75 seconds to charge her ambush. With those stats in mind, we're going to break down the two add-on combos side by side here. Combat straps reduce the crouch and uncrouch time by 0.3 seconds, combined with videotape, which reduces the ambush charge time by 0.37 seconds. This means we're now at 1 second to crouch and uncrouch and 0.38 seconds to ambush, down from 1.3 and 0.75 respectively. So if we add everything up here, with the combat straps and videotape, you're looking at 1.38 seconds to crouch and ambush versus 2.05 seconds by default. To me, this is a nice well-rounded combo. You split the ambush charge time in half, with no diminishing returns that you're going to get from John's medical file, while also taking off 0.3 seconds to crouch, which will add up if you're doing mind games by standing up, zoning people, faking your ambush, etc. Now, we'll look at videotape and John's medical file. This is where it gets a little bit confusing, but just bear with me, all the numbers will be on the screen regardless. Again, videotape reduces the ambush by 0.37 seconds, so does John's medical file, but they don't stack together to just delete the ambush time. Technically, I believe they both do minus 50%, but not combined. So if we throw videotape on, we go from 0.75 to 0.37, and then if we throw John's medical file onto the 0.37, we don't go down to 0, you just half it and it goes to 0.19. It's confusing, I know, but if you put on two 0.37 seconds on top of each other, it would make 0.75 and then you don't have an ambush charge time, so as far as I'm aware, that's how it works. Right, so those are the numbers, they're on the screen, you can compare them yourself. Basically, with combat straps and videotape, my choice, 1 second to crouch, 0.38 seconds to ambush, which is half of the ambush time. With John's medical file on the videotape, it is 1.3 seconds to crouch by default and 0.19 to ambush. The 0.19 seconds, of course, is diminishing returns. You don't just go down to 0, you half 0.38, meaning that stacking the videotape and medical file only takes off 0.2 seconds of what you'd get if you just put combat straps and videotape on anyway. This means that you have to ask yourself the question of where do you want to shave the time? You can already see where the time's going to be, can't you? I've written down like 6 paragraphs here, but we can just break this down really simply. Combat straps and videotape offers you a more well-rounded experience. I don't need to tell you this because it's on the screen, you can see the numbers. Those 0.3 seconds aren't just 0.3 seconds, they can turn into 0.6 seconds, which is 3 times the amount that videotape and medical file will save you with your ambush because you're only reducing it by 0.2 seconds between the two combos, right? That time is very useful in ambushing and mind games on small loops or medium loops or even zoning people. You, or even me, with 1,000 hours in Pig is not going to do anything with those 0.2 seconds that videotape and medical file offer you. But you will do something with the 0.3 seconds potentially turned into 0.6 seconds that combat straps and videotape offer you. Of course, it comes down to preference, but if you're a pig that likes to ambush a lot, then maybe those 0.2 seconds will do something. My conclusion is the combat straps and videotape combination offers you a much better, well-rounded experience as opposed to insta-ambush. But you can make your own mind about that because the stats are on the screen. Alright. Now that's out of the way, let's move on to something more simple. 6-box pig. If you add 1 box, and then you add 1 box, that makes 2 boxes. Onto the default 4, that's 6. Bro, we did it. There you go. I like this combination because, in my opinion, it actually gives use to Jigsaw's annotated plan. The annotated plan offers you 1 extra box at the expense of an extra 20 seconds, raising it to 2 minutes and 50 seconds overall. In my opinion, that is a damn poor exchange. Particularly if we break down that means survivors now have 34 seconds overall to check all 5 boxes, which is only slightly better than the 37.5 seconds the survivors would have to check the original 4 boxes. Ignoring those gross numbers that the plus 20 seconds give us, the real reason I recommend this combination is to waste time. Of course, you can throw in a spicy 6 box and all survivors take their traps off first time. That would be really cool, and that's obviously what's going to happen every time because Pig is, she's Lady Luck in human form. But let's just pretend the Pig's having a really pleasant day. She's had lots of boops, and there's been a Cheryl in every single game, so these add-ons actually work, kind of. I won't do any more math, but now that there's 6 boxes instead of 4, the odds go up, right? That's how probability works. I'm not going to break it down for you, because you don't need to. There's 6 instead of 4. There's 4 survivors, there's 4 traps. On average, you're going to be wasting more time. It's not that I recommend this combo, but I wanted to find a use for Jigsaw's annotated plan and the 20 seconds that it gives you, and it's just not really worth it with anything else. So I think that if you want to get funky with it, you throw on an extra box, and you throw on an extra box of 20 seconds, and you say, hey, don't worry about the timer, but if you want to go waste time, if you want to not pay attention, and then be like, oh god, I've still got 3 boxes left, I didn't realise that there were 6 overall, then that can actually be quite a weird experience, and it's one that maybe won't pop their head, but you will waste their time, and you're going to keep the game as a 3v1 for well over a minute if you're lucky, maybe 2 minutes, maybe you'll even kill someone, but it's a time waster. 6 box Pig, that's the real time waster here, if we're working on averages or a nice pleasant day for the Pig. You may have noticed that we haven't talked about the Last Will add-on yet. Controversial? Get ready. This is because I feel Last Will isn't actually as good as people make it out to be. As I mentioned in my previous guide about reverse bear trap placement, whether you get use out of every single trap from the Last Will is really random, and the extra one just seems like overkill most of the time. From my personal experience, and yes, this is completely biased towards my playstyle, my playtime, my experiences, maybe 80% of the time I run this add-on, I just don't get to use them all. Like, seriously, either I get 3 traps on and someone gives up, or I get 2 traps on because I couldn't even get the downs in time because I'm facing some death squad. That is, of course, completely specific to me, but there is one factor in this that works towards the games being shorter, and that is, if you have an extra trap, you can afford to put an extra trap on earlier. If you have an extra trap, you can tilt the early game in your favour by placing more then, as opposed to spacing them out. And what I find if you do this, placing too many early on, say you put 2 traps on before the first gen has popped, people just give up. And this isn't just a random thing. Every time I run the Last Will, I know it sounds like such a good add-on. 5 traps, you know, if we're going to buff Pig, give her an extra trap, let her pick the traps up. Every time I run the Last Will, I never get to use all the traps, and I don't know why. I don't know if it's specific to me. As a result of this finding, and my extremely poor luck with the Last Will curse, I've relegated this add-on to be supplementary. Supplementary to what, you might ask? Well, performance add-ons. Performance, of course, referring to status effects such as exhaustion, blindness, and mangled that are obviously going to hinder the player's performance in the trial. Running the Last Will with performance add-ons accommodates my fear that the game is going to end too early, either by the survivors giving up or by my complete failure. If you throw on exhausted with the Last Will, then you end up with a bunch of people that can't dead hard or sprint burst, and as a result, they want to get their traps off quickly. If you throw the Last Will on with a bunch of mangled traps, then people aren't going to be able to heal as quickly, the medkits aren't going to be utilised, and there'll be people in the corner of the map being absolutely brutalised as they self-care. That's my general idea of what I use performance add-ons for, adding an extra trap, and that way you completely overwhelm the survivors with status effects, instead of a status effect add-on and then an arbitrary slowdown add-on, which doesn't really make much sense. Of course, in this same vein, you don't need to run status effect and Last Will, you can also run status effect and status effect. So, if you're running exhaustion and mangled, they're going to be running to the heals to get these traps off, because their heals are slow, they can't use one of their perks, the medkit's not working, you're putting a huge dampener on their loadout that they brought into the trial, and it encourages them to go and slow themselves down, take a breather in the corner and get their trap off. In the same vein, I've found the best combination is actually Face Mask and Last Will, because blindness is sorely overlooked in this game and people won't even think twice about why they can't see a hook until it's too late and someone's already in second stage. People will say, oh, well, survivor friends can just comm. They can, but unless they're at a point of interest like Shaq, the time that it takes them to get there, to comm, to figure out where they are and what direction they need to be going in, the blindness might have already done the damage that it needs to, and that is to get someone into second stage. If you throw 2 or 3 of these on at the beginning of the game, get someone hooked, if those traps are active, they're not going to be paying attention when they get the hook notification, and then they have no idea where anyone is. I've actually had situations where 3 of the blindness traps were on, 1 person was hooked, 2 of them were active, and someone was taking a trap off next to the hook because they just had no idea. Taking these examples here, it's very easy to see that my mindset is to overwhelm with status effects. You either double down on them with a mangled and a blindness, or a blindness and an exhaustion, or you add an extra trap and just completely overbear them with one specific type that goes on everyone as quickly as possible. Once again, as I mentioned with the crate of gears and the bag of gears, the beauty here is that this is not RNG reliant. You put those traps on, whether it's active or not, they're going to want to get it off because they have an exhaustion stuck to their head. They have blindness stuck to their head. They want to get this off whether it's active or not, so you can throw them on as much as possible and it will still do the damage that it needs to do. Jigsaw Sketch is actually getting a lot of use in this video. It adds an extra box at no cost. So it works well with the tampered timer, and as we saw a moment ago, it works well with the annotated plan. However, there's one last combo I feel it works well in, and that's alongside rule set number 2. Don't get me wrong, rule set number 2 is Garbo, and we'll come to that in a little bit. However, there's a very simple concept I keep in mind when running rule set number 2 with the Jigsaw Sketch, offering an extra box. Rule set removes the aura of the boxes for the survivors until that reverse bear trap is active. With that in mind, you'll find it doesn't help too much considering boxes are in easy to find locations, and searching for one before the trap is active means that you've got plenty of time to search the other 3 boxes. Basically, it's less of an ultra rare, and more of why isn't this in the base kit? I don't understand. Although rule set number 2 isn't that great, I find that adding an extra box really brings out its full potential, but as we'll see in the conclusion, it tends to really just cancel one another out. You have to remember that rule set number 2 isn't really there to encourage a head pop, it's more there to encourage a waste of time. If the survivors want to go and check the boxes, they can, but they may be hard to find. More often than not, they're not going to be difficult to find, they're bright white and they're everywhere, plus most survivors know the spawns, but the survivors are asked a question which is, do they want to go for boxes and waste time in the short term versus potentially end up running against the full extent of the pig's timer. If we add an extra box into this mix, then you get the benefit of both. They spend 30 seconds or so looking for the box, potentially. They search the box, and in this 30, maybe 40 seconds, their trap is now active, and now they've got 4 more boxes to search. In the best case scenario, of course. The worst case scenario is they just take it off before the trap's even activated. It depends from what perspective you want to view this add-on combination in, but I find that rule set number 2 and an extra box is really a nice combination if you want to try and get the most out of rule set number 2. You're not really creating anything special. If anything, you're cancelling one out, as I said, and you're making it so that, oh, they checked a box and wasted 30 seconds. Trap's now active, and they've got 4 more boxes to check, so it's like they're playing default pig. But you waste a little bit more time at the beginning because there's an extra box there and they didn't know where it was, hopefully. There's other ideas like pairing rule set number 2 with the tempered timer. That way you get the full extent of the tempered timer, 2 minutes to check 4 boxes, but you just run into similar risks of the survivor gets hooked next to a box and they don't actually spend any extra time searching. They don't need the aura if they're hooked next to it, or if they've ran past it, or if it's in the center of a building that they're in. It all comes down to completely RNG, maybe even the survivors you're facing, so it's up to you where you put rule set number 2. Where I would put rule set number 2 would be in the base kit, but I suppose that's a discussion for another time. Finally, before we conclude with some additional notes, we have the infamous Amanda's Letter. This add-on is directly comparable to that of Scratch Mirror for Michael Myers or the All-Seeing add-on for Wraith. Do bear in mind that the pig's power is significantly neutered as a result of this. This is because somehow the devs felt that forcing Pig into her crouch, which moves at 90% speed, which is slower than the carrying speed by the way, just so that she can see auras 12 meters away is a good exchange for taking away almost all of her powers, being you have 1 trap, there's 2 jigsaw boxes, and you can only use this add-on on an indoor map. Ultra rare, by the way. I don't really understand why, but that's the lowdown. Really, that's all there is to it. It's a meme add-on that you're going to struggle to use anywhere except indoor maps, and I mean that. If you play Coldwind, if you play an Azerov, if you play against survivors that know as soon as the pig crouches they should just leave, then it's going to be very difficult anywhere except an indoor map. I'm of the opinion that add-ons like this, and the waterlogged shoe, the matchbox, scratch mirror, should have their own special category called nuanced, or unique, or whatever you want to call it, instead of taking precious spaces away from ultra rare add-ons that could actually do something. Regardless of my complaints about such an add-on, take it for what it is. It's an individual, isolated experience that you should indulge in infrequently. The question is, what should you pair with Amanda's Letter? Should it be a videotape? Should it be a last will, or combat straps? For me, videotape is out of the question because I always stand up before hitting a survivor, so that's out. Then it comes down to combat straps versus last will, and it's also quite an easy split because Amanda's Letter, as I said, reduces the number of boxes from 4 to 2. You're also going to be in an indoor map, so the map is quite small, and it should be easy to locate the boxes. Break that down, it means that the survivors have over a minute to check each box, so adding a trap isn't going to do anything. That's why I usually encourage, unless you really like ambushing and you want to throw videotape on, then fair enough, but I would very much, as with combat straps and videotape, encourage the combat straps because you want to be crouching and uncrouching as much as possible to not be just crouching around the map constantly. You want to utilize the aura reading when you can, and you want to make sure you're not wasting time at 90% speed, which is 10% slower than survivors and 25% slower than your walking speed. Ultimately though, you are running Amanda's Letter for a very unique experience, so you're going to an indoor map, you're already looking for a very fun time. You're going to be jump scaring survivors, and the difference between combat straps and videotape, or an extra trap, is really up to you. The damage here has already been done because you go from 4 traps down to 1. So, pick your poison. I go for combat straps and Amanda's Letter because I like jumping in and out of crouch, but if you want to throw on an extra trap and try and pop someone's head with the 2 boxes, why not make it an interesting experience? If you want to do videotape, sure. If you want to add Jigsaw's box, perhaps. So there's 3 boxes now, but we're getting into weird territory. Amanda's Letter, combat straps, just keep it simple. Go to an indoor map, have some fun with it. Right, those are my picks for the best add-on combos for the pig. You'll notice that there are certain add-ons that weren't mentioned because they're literal garbage. For example, when we talked about status effects, we didn't mention utility blades because hemorrhage is completely pointless. Unless you're running some kind of meme build with Bloodhound or Sloppy Butcher or whatever the hell. In addition to this, you also have to take into account interlocking razor, razor wires, and workshop grease. Interlocking razor increases the penalty for missed skill checks by 50%, which is definitely something, and theoretically, if you added interlocking razor with razor wires, you're increasing the skill check trigger odds and the penalty for missing them, but when you break it down, both razor wires and workshop grease increase the skill check odds by 2% and 1% respectively. You don't need me to tell you why those add-ons are bad, especially when the skill check trigger odds on a Jigsaw box are already 80% per second. So at that point, we don't even really need to discuss interlocking razor because it doesn't really have a place in my opinion. 50% penalty to missing skill checks is okay, but when you look at the 2 situations that will work in, either the survivor misses it randomly by themselves, and you're not there to capitalize, so they just take a little bit longer on the box, or the killer's close, the pressure's high to hit the skill check, the survivor misses the skill check, and the killer scares them off the box. But then you have to realize the killer would have scared them off the box anyway, so what's the point? You might as well just use crate of gears and bag of gears if you want actual slowdown. So, interlocking razor wire, razor wires, and workshop grease, absolute garbage. Then we look at rule set number 2, and rule set number 2 is in my combos, but this should just be base kit. It really doesn't have a place, honestly. It really doesn't have a place in the add-ons. It's just not very good. And then lastly on our list of Garbo is Amanda's Secret. Some people like this add-on and I just can't wrap my head around it. You can read the description as many times as you want, but it doesn't seem to work the way that it says. It says gain a notification when a survivor removes the reverse bear trap and see the auras of survivors removing the reverse bear trap, but every time I run this add-on, it just doesn't work that way. The only time I see the aura is when someone takes the trap off, and the only time I get a notification is of course when someone takes a trap off. So I feel like it might be worded wrong, and I just don't really understand this add-on, even with over 1,000 hours on Pig. I don't get it. I've seen people sing its praises, but even in the best case scenario, you still don't get to see the boxes. You don't see the auras of the boxes, which means that your pressuring time is based on random chance. You could be on the other side of the map. Whereas if you see the aura of the boxes by yourself, you get to decide when to check them, and I think that's the big takeaway from running a Madder Secret. I don't understand the notification and the aura reading. I don't know if they work as they're supposed to. Maybe they do and I just don't get it. But you don't get to see the boxes, and that is a huge exchange for aura reading for 6 seconds of someone who takes the trap off at a box that is on the other side of the map while you're in a chase or doing something important. I much prefer to patrol the boxes on my own time as opposed to a 6-second indication that I need to be there now. So, Amanda's Secret, that's a big no from me. I think that's everything. Everything I could possibly say about add-ons. I'm sure I missed something, as usual, but there's always another video to be made. With that being said, if you have other questions you'd like me to answer, please do feel free to ask me. I enjoy making these videos. They take a long time, but they're a great supplement to the Twitch stream. I get asked a lot of questions on stream. As I said, twitch.tv/CMWinter. We're live every single day, 10 PM UK time, 5 PM Eastern, dependent on daylight savings. So if you want to see some Pig, do come over. We play every single day, good 4 hours usually. There's also a Discord, so feel free to jump in, and if you want to have a discussion, feel free to DM me, ask me any questions, leave a comment. I'm open to any kind of discussion or critique or feedback. If there's a way for me to make the videos better, do feel free to let me know. But ultimately, thank you very much for watching. I do appreciate your time. As I said, check out the Discord, check out the YouTube. I mean, you're on the YouTube, check out the Twitch, subscribe. I will do my best to create more of these because it seems like there's a niche for it. So thank you very much for your time.